Hello and welcome to my N64 video on using sounds on the N64. So in this video I will go over how to add some music and sound effects for playback on the N64. So first off, there is or are some slight things to be aware of when playing sound on the N64, as it has no sound card of its own, and it also shares RAM with everything else. There is some potential delays which you can encounter and some issues. So what happens is the music is obviously saved on the ROM cartridge in whatever format you sort of put it on there in. And then what actually has to happen is the CPU then has to copy that into the console RAM. So your shared system RAM basically. And then the RSP chip then has to organize that data and work with it, carrying out whatever additional effects you want to add on it. It then gets sent to the audio interface block, which then sends it to the DAC, or the digital to analog converter, which then processes it further and then sends it on to the TV speakers. But the RSP obviously works with graphics as well, so potentially these things can impact one another. If you are heavily pumping out graphics, then there's a chance that this could have a knock-on effect to your sound. An example is like a N64 Mario Kart, where the NTSC version, there's no sort of music through the sort of like racing itself, sound effects but not music. And again, there's usually some sort of trade-offs that you will need to make to get sound working. So first off, let's I'll show you the sort of the demo that I'll go through today. So we'll be working back off of the CoinDash game from the last video. We'll put some sound in there now so that it actually sounds like a proper game. So one thing to note as well is the sound does sound a bit choppy and laggy in the emulator, whereas it does sound better on the real thing. So let's boot this up. So there isn't actually any sort of issues on the title screen part here. Like when the actual game gets going, then the emulator slows down. So if I press start here, you'll hear that the emulator sound playing the music has slowed down a bit. And then we have some coin sound effects playing here. So sometimes you might be able to hear some popping and distortion with sounds. I've sort of had this issue with a number of projects. So sometimes you'll have to add some more sort of time onto the end of like sound samples to try and negate the like clicking and popping of when one sound sample finishes. And then if we complete the level, and we have a level clear sound effect. Okay, there should actually be another song playing now. And and we have a die-in sound effect there as well. So there are actually 2 music tracks. Sometimes it's kind of like a slight delay as well with some sounds being played back. Again, you'll have to sort of tweak these in your own sort of project. There's a lot of trial and error of trying to get sounds to kind of play on time. But anyway, let's jump into the project here. So all I'm going to really go over is the sound manager code. So I have like a sound manager header and a sound manager source file here. So will be a few things we kind of need to lay out beforehand. Like, so what I like to do is I'll split everything into sound effects and music tracks. Usually the music tracks will obviously go on for longer than a sound effect. So we keep them separate so that usually with the music tracks we might want to play them looping or just play them once. But generally they sort of last a lot longer than the like sound samples. So I'll show you how these are organized in this project here. So you literally just add these to your assets folder like you do the images, but the make file need to make sure, thankfully the make files I create tend to already be sort of pre-built to accommodate everything. You'll see here we have assets.wave. So what this line here will do is it will search in the assets folder for anything with .wave at the end here. You see there's one for XM as well, which is like a mod file format. I won't be using those. I have tried in the past to get them to work, and usually what happens is one will play fine, but then when I try and switch out for another I usually encounter issues. So I will be sticking to wave files here. So what happens is the where are we here? The LibDragon comes with like a wave converter, and then what it does is it will process all your wave files and convert them into the wave64 format, as you can see here. So if you intend to do any music or have any audio, then you'll need to make sure that you have the relevant asset conversion parts added to your makefile. These are kind of, all of these makefiles are all adaptations from the examples which you can get with LibDragon. So if you look in the various examples folder for audio, you'll see there's one for like a mixer test here, and then that has some wave files in there. And then it goes over some simple use of these. So my code is kind of adapted from that, except for obviously working with games here. So one of the things which the sound player doesn't do is it doesn't block at all. So you constantly throughout the game you'll have to call the sound update function. and then all that does is it uses this command here, mixer try play. So the way that audio works is LibDragon will create some audio buffers for us, which are basically like caches or memory stores, if you like, where the raw sound data will be streamed into, and then these buffers will then be mixed together, or rather, sorry, they'll be passed to the mixer, which then mixes these buffers together and then streams that to the speakers eventually. So loads of the various audio commands are, some details of them in header files which come with LibDragon. If you've seen the previous video as well, there is a link to N64 Squid, which has some more info about playing sound files and assets. Everything seems to be slowing down. So if you come down here and have a look at the LibDragon audio, he has a load of stuff here about playing audio and mixers and all that sort of stuff. So what I tend to do, like I said, is I keep sound effects and music tracks separate, and then I create like a list of the file names without wave on the end, and then separate them to like sound effects and music, and then I usually create like a structure to hold the wave 64 type. This is the structure that LibDragon passes all this sort of sound data into. So here's the sort of structure here with some various bits and pieces in there which I don't tend to use. And then I have in the past tried to keep the frequency of the sounds, but I don't think there's any real sort of need. I've done loads of trial and error myself to try and get things sounding as good as they can. So there's some predefines here where we have the maximum amount of sound channels. So this number here is passed to the mixer to initialize the mixer, which has to be done when you before you start using or opening any Wave 64 files. So if we have a look in the assets folder here at the relevant Wave files here, these are some which will be included with the project. So you just need to provide the names of them there. And then it's recommended by LibDragon that you initialize the audio with the 44.1 kilohertz. And then it says 4 channels, or rather 4 buffers. And then you can have up to 32 channels. I'm choosing 16 here. and then we have a loop here for loading our sound effects. And then all we're doing here basically is we have some predefined strings here. Every sort of sound file must start with rom : / as these are being loaded from the file system of LibDragon. Let's double check here. So another thing, let's have a look. Yeah, I think I covered the filing system initialize in the last video, so I won't go over any more here. But basically, before you can use the filing system which LibDragon provides, you have to call the initialize function on that, and then that allows us to open wave files. And then there's a few different commands for these. So if you check out the header file and then have a look through, you'll see we have a set loop, and then there's play, and then there's close. So all we're doing is we're passing in a pointer to our wave file here. We've got static lists. So you see here we have sound effects max, which is 3, and then music max, which is 4, which is here. I'll go over adding another track in a moment once I've covered all this, and then we'll add an extra level and give that music as well. Again, you probably won't get the sort of best feedback on this without actually playing it on the real machine. Kind of sounds fine on the real N64, or rather my NTSC one. I assume it will be fine on PAL, although I can't sort of vouch for it because I haven't played it on a PAL machine. So for our sound effects, we open the file. So we pass in the pointer to our Wave64 there, and then we pass in the string for the file to open. Then we set the loop to false, as I don't want to loop any sound effects. And then we do the same thing here for our music files. And then the first two here, which is the stage clear and the game over sound, I put the loop into false, and then all the others I put it to true, as they will obviously be like in-game tracks to play. One thing to note about these is if you open this up here, you'll see here that it opens the structure, but that samples are not preloaded in memory. So what you can do there pretty much is initialize everything at the start of the game, and then when you sort of switch and play songs, they will be streamed as required, so they're not all sort of copied in memory at one time, which is good, because that means we can kind of arrange all of our sort of songs that we want at the start here, and then not have to worry about releasing each song before starting the next one off, which is something I had sort of concerns with, as my N64 doesn't have a memory expansion in it, and as RAM is shared, the last thing you want to do is to be taking everything over with sound. And then one thing to note here as well is getting the sound to work is kind of a mixture between using the like sound mixer and the Wave 64 commands. So another thing to note as well is that all of my sound effects are mono. So you could have some issues playing back stereo. I'm not sure whether we need an extra mixer channel for stereo sounds. I believe we probably would. So that's something to be aware of if you're playing stereo. When you sort of play a sound, you the Wave 64 play kind of, one thing that it requires at the end is a channel number. So I tend to try and make sure that everything is kind of given its own channel at the start. So there will only be one music track playing at any one time. So I usually give the music track channel 0. And then all of the like sound effects can kind of go after that. So I set the volume which I want at the end here of this function here. You see it has the left and right volume values for you to set here. So that's what these are here. I've kind of set this to 3/4 volume. So if you look at this command here, this tells you the numbers to pass in here. So the range is obviously 0 to 1, so 1 is like maximum volume. And then these functions here, we have a music stop, which does exactly what you think it would do. So one thing to note as well is I keep an active music ID here, so we know which track is actually playing. And then when it's not playing, I usually put it to -1. So these are kind of like private variables here, kept purely inside here. And then we have like another variable here to know whether the music is actually playing or not. And then another one to know whether it's actually looping as well. And then when it comes to playing a music file, we literally pass in one of the music track names, and then we say whether we want it to loop or not. If the track is not active, then it first checks to see whether, or rather if the active music ID is not equal to the music ID we've passed in here, then we will set up that sound. Otherwise we'll just set the position of the music stream to 0, which is the start. So we can use the mixer channel playing command here to let us know whether a channel has any music playing on it. So I always stop the current playing track, set its position back to 0, and then we get the next wave track from our list of songs, So one thing to note here as well is this music ID should obviously only be one of the tracks that you've actually preloaded and set up, otherwise it will crash. And then once we have everything all set, then we call the Wave64 play command with the I sort of have like another Wave64 pointer to the active music. That's just pointing to that's just having another pointer to the current song from the list. At the start it's set to no, so we're not playing any music, so you have to tell it to play a song first. Then it gets set to a song from the array list of songs. And then playing our sound effects is slightly different. All I do here is as the music sound channel is 0, add 1 to it. Should probably have something similar in the play music thing here, so I'll do that. I'll put in a range checker here. So that will help you there if you send the wrong number to the music player. So there's not a lot in here really. Loads of it's going to be you'll be playing around trying to get things working. That's just how it goes, unfortunately. There's a few different ways you can kind of work with the audio, and I'll leave those in here for you to sort of see. Some of these are taken from the other sort of examples from LibDragon, but they tend to block everything else going on. Like, so if you block things, then you'll end up getting like pauses in graphics or sound. So instead, I find that the mixer play command just works fine. If you've seen the other video, where you'll see that all of the graphics commands that I use are non-blocking, as we won't always be able to sort of play audio. And then if you have a look in here, this will give you some more sort of info if the sound starts stuttering or whatever. And then this one here can be useful as well, is music playing. So for example, if you were restarting a level or you were finishing a stage or something, you might want to know whether some music is playing. So you can stop it and then advance to the next. So to use the sound manager, first call sound init at the start, and then in the main loop I usually have a sound update as well. And then so one thing to note here as well is obviously the whole game code is actually in the title screen code here. It wasn't moved out. I usually do this when I'm sort of developing games. I get the sort of core of the game working first, and then I move it to the sort of like game modules and put the relevant parts into their place. but as we are just tinkering around here, I have not done that. So in the title screen initialize function here, I literally just call play track 1 and then pass in true to loop it. Very straightforward. And then anytime you want to play a sound effect, it's as simple as play sound effect, and then you pass in the ID of the sound effect you want to play. Just need to make sure that this order here is the same order you load them in. So this list of files here is the order they will be loaded in, and these should correspond to the names you give here. So to add another song in, we'll add another track there. And then you will need to know the name of the asset you want to load. So for me, it's this one here we're going to load in. Move that over there so we can do it side by side. And then what should happen is when we build this, in fact what we'll do is we will have that play. Where are we here? So let's try and build that. So that seems to be fine. And then what you should see is in the file system folder, so you see that it's built these into Wave64 files here. So this is what will get packed onto the ROM card. Now if we load this in, you shouldn't get any errors like this. So let's see what I've done wrong there. Oh, it's because I've spelt it wrong. So let's clean and rebuild this again. So it is actually supposed to sound slightly slowed down. I've tinkered around and sort of remixed the version of this which was on the Sonic Gem Dash game which I created. So it really is as simple as that, adding extra music and sound files. Like for your own projects, you'll just have to sort of play around. So when you sort of throughout your main game, you might need to add more sound update commands in there, which is literally just calling the mixer command. Where is it? The mixer try and play. So what happens is, if there's enough audio data in the mixer to send to the DAC, then it will try and it will send it. If there's not enough data to work with, then it won't. So depending on how worked the RSP is, as it deals with graphics as well, you might have to try and keep spamming it with mixer try and play commands to resolve issues that you're having. So one of the things that I have been trying to play around with here is, you might have to mix your samples down. So this is 22 kilohertz here, so if we wanted to try and help the N64, we might want to reduce the size of this track. So to do that, we would use resample, and then we could then change the sample rate. So obviously this will affect the quality of the sound, possibly, depending on the sort of frequencies this sound uses. It could sound terrible, or it might not be noticeable at all. That would be like sort of sound effect dependent. Probably not going to notice that, so then you would just export that. And then the next thing you can do is either use 16-bit audio, or maybe try going down to 8-bit audio. This can reduce the amount of data a sound sample uses, which can make it faster to stream. So if we look here, you'll see at the moment ping 1B is 17.7 kilobytes. If I save this version here, and then we have a look in here, you'll see that the size of it is reduced now to almost half of that. That can be something to try with sounds as well. If you're having issues with them not playing properly, then you might want to try having like a lower frequency, as the lower the amount of data the sample takes, in theory, the quicker and more seamless it should play. Another thing you can try doing as well, if you're getting like pops at the end of like sound effects, is to try and add additional silence at the end of a sound sample or a music track. So to do that, you just move your cursor to the end here, make sure you are on this option here, go into generate and then silence, and then make sure it's milliseconds, and then 0.10 at the end there. If we add that, you'll see we've literally just added an extra 10 milliseconds of silence at the end of this track. So then you can export that again, which I'm not bothered doing because there's no point to it. But this is to give you an idea of how you can try and tweak your sounds to try and get them to sound better if you are having issues. So I don't think there's anything else I can really sort of go over here. I'm not going into the sort of game code. I kind of went through that in the previous video. This is just to give you an example sound player that you can use, as it's all sort of well and fine having isolated sound playing examples, but in like a real sort of game you have to share resources between the CPU and the RSP with everything else that's going on. So hopefully this helps you to have a play around with sounds. So that's it for this example. If you have any sort of questions, then let me know in the comments below. It literally is lots of trial and error with sound, I'm afraid. So in the next video we will be entering into 3D on the N64, so I will catch you then.